Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. This guy here to tell you a story. Your griot. Don't believe a word I say. Everything that you see on Dreamy Dreamland is just for your entertainment's sake. So, what are you doing here? What are you going to do about it? I find myself here in the non-disclosed bunker. Um, and It's an interesting time. It's an interesting place. Now, I've done, I don't know, more than 2,000 shows. I started doing this around 2017, so that's 18, 19, 20, right? Let's say it's 18, 19, that's two, and then add five. So that's 7 years, give or take, right? So I have more than 2,000 shows. They're all pretty different. They all have a name. All you have to do is go to my channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, kind of go to shows, right? And just put your little cursor on it and then go wing and go bling, 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 and stop at one of them. And then take a look, right? And then, you've got it on your screen. That you can put your little cursor down at the bottom of the screen where the little red line is, and you can go whoop, and you'll see me going, right? And if any of that kind of moment stops you, oh, look at that. What's he saying? Right? That's a good way to kind of generalistically take a look at them, especially if you go into state. Now, we have done many, 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 many um, guided meditations, right? Put you in live chat there. And so there's many Eastern studies, so you name it. And basically, what you have to do is there's a process when you consciously breathe, right? And one of the conscious breaths you can do is first through one nostril and then to the other nostril, right? And what it is doing is getting oxygen to different sides of your brain, specifically, each time you do that. And if you do it consciously, you will slow down your body. Your endocrine system will kind of start to relax. Your cortisol will not be heightened. Your adrenaline won't be spiked, and you'll be able to notice things about your existence. Right? So, let's start that. Let's actually change the mood, as they say, as the kids say. Let's see here. Change the light temperature. There we go. So you can see the color of my skin without it being artificially tainted by the essence of the fluorescent tube and the LED. The pictures above me are a mixture of that. So you get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and before you know it, what do you got? You got the King James Bible. So I'd love to hear your motif of what you think the King James Bible is. You think it's the Word of God, right? Why did Jesus go into the temple and throw the money changers out when his whole motif was about forgiveness, right? And he never quite said he was God, even though he said he was the son of, right? And was he just giving us an example to shoot for? And when you talk to God, and what is that? So this is a good little thing. So let's do this little breathing thing, and you should be able to hear quietness. Oh, I'm down here in the bunker, and there are all kinds of like machines working, but quietly. So the more I become quiet, the more those machines will become prominent. And then when you become quiet through your breath, those machines will disappear. So let's give it a try, see what happens, okay? And now you're not perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to do your best. Right? Through that process of doing your best, you learn something. And then if you learn it, then you can basically build upon it.
Here's the raw truth. Your spiritual practice fails because you believe comfortable lies. Modern spirituality has become a marketplace of deception, where real transformation drowns in feel-good falsehoods. Today, I'll shatter 6 major lies blocking your evolution, plus one bonus deception most teachers won't touch. This will hurt, but growth demands truth. The first lie runs deep in modern spiritual culture, the dependency trap. Sacred plant medicines have served enlightened beings throughout history. From Amazonia.
And that dependency isn't just chemicals, right? It's ritual. Basically, all religions are based on ritual, right? Not experience, not in conscious communication of intent of co-creation of love, right? It's a ritual. You burn this incense, that you breathe it in. That was the oracle of Delphi, right? The girls lived in a cave, and in the cave there was a underground spring, hot springs that also gave off chemicals that were hallucinogenic. So they were down there in the pond, nice warm. Ooh, this feels good, and they were breathing that in, and so yeah, they were having basically tactile experience and exposure and stimulation, along with psychotropic. Right? And so other religions have that same motif. Okay, who's talking to us? Well, we got 3 thumbs up. Thanks. Hey, Marker. Ritual is the husk of the true faith, the last step before chaos. Ooh, go deeper in that, my friend. That's very, very, I like that. Ritual is the husk. And what is a husk? That's an outside, um, very Tao Te Ching. Okay, okay, okay. Not everyone knows that. Come on, be a little more descriptive. You know, how does that? How does that make you feel? Right, the husk of true faith. What is true faith? Faith is not something that you can manufacture. No, faith is something that is given to you. What do you think of that one? The last step before chaos. And what is chaos? Chaos is letting go, right? Of all those rituals. Inner knowing. Okay, we're getting somewhere there. Inner knowing. Now, what is that inner knowing? What is that connectivity? That inner knowing. Hmm? Is that inner knowing the um, shucking of the husk, which is your ego? That is the ego is the husk of the ritual. What do you think of that? And when we explore this, what is this exploration, right? Is this religion? Is it science? Is it magic? Is it, I try not to think often. Okay, that's when you have this conscious intent of not, and what is, first of all, what is thinking, right? Is thinking just the wah, wah, wah of your ego? Hmm? Is thinking anything specifically righteous? Or is it an illusion? What do you think? You're not supposed to use the same word. But marker, you do not try, you do. You can't be perfect, but you do your best to not think. Right? You do your best to, in every day, in every way, take the peace of the earth and make it stronger through conscious intent of co-creation with loves. Intuition is the new thinking. Mm. So intuition, what is that? Is that just the make believe of your ego? Oh, I'm not really thinking. I'm not. My ego isn't really here. I'm intuitive. What do you think? What do you intune? Or because we are in these kind of bags of water, what do you feel when you're being intuitive? What are you feeling? And the Tao Te Ching, what is that teaching? What is that really teaching? Right? Ego is the meditator between the mediator between persona and the shadow. Okay, that's kind of very Freudian, or no, Jungian actually. Um, but again, all of these things are just the husk. You really are just describing the husk, which is, I mean, we're doing some good work here, and I want to thank you, Margaret 113. So, you know, and you're making a, when you say ego is the meditator, meaning that's the physical illusion. The ego is that illusion, and the meditator is the physical me, the what I think I am, um, between the persona, that thing that I put out there, explanation. Um, that's not really me, because the real me is the doula, the slave to love's co-creation, nothing else. Not my what I look like, the being the A-lister, having loads of money, all the above. I gave everything I had away. Now I got stuff because I live in a material world, I wasn't, quite adept to be the guy on the corner in my underpants, just, hyperventilating car exhaust. No, I wasn't there. But I am out, I'm not Ted Kaczynski out in the woods living in a box, but I do have a nice little cabin out in the woods. I leave it. And right now, why I'm in the undisclosed location is because we are experiencing, and I said this 2 weeks ago, that end of December and January were the beginning of a very interesting energetic period when the planet is changing in big times. And it's, back in the day when Y2K and everybody would start to end the times, all the preppers, blah, blah, blah. And I was employed by an entity that wanted to look at cults, right? And there was this, it was called the Devil's Highway that went from Asheville 26 up to 81, hang a right, go up 81 to Stanton, and then take another right and go to Charlottesville and then DC, and all through that, and then the Blue Ridge Parkway kind of is over there to the south of all of that, just a tad, because 81 is that kind of that highway that's in the Roanoke Valley that that is between the Appalachian Mountain Range and the Blue Ridge, right? And Stanton is where Woodrow Wilson came from, and it is a very squirrely place. And along that, parallel to 81, is this other State Road 47 that goes, right at the backbone of the Blue Ridge, before 81 was built. So, and 11 was built before that, which was the Dixie Highway. It basically kind of goes from Maine all the way down through that valley, because that valley, the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge go kind of up into Canada, right? And that valley kind of is all the way down. They call it many different things. And there are lots of other geologic characteristics, like in upstate New York, where there's Finger Lakes. And all of those are energetic spots. The ley lines are all over that place. And that's the place I got. The ley line is so freaking big. It comes out of the ground. The back part of my property is this like big bar of unknown material that's, I brought guys up from ETSU and UNC Chapel Hill to bring their little scientific instruments and see what it is. And they couldn't touch it, lasered it, tried to drill it. Man, it wouldn't even scratch. Energetically, it was giving up tons of juice. And they go, yeah, this is a ley line. Yeah, but it's on top of the ground. I said, no, it's just big. It goes all the way down. How do you know that? I said, kind of guys, yeah, your instruments are great, but why don't you go? Let's go get a switch. Let's do some dowsing. What do you think? And there was one old timer who was a real good scientist. He said, yeah. So we went up in the woods, made ourselves some switches, and doused it. And they were like, whoa, So it's an interesting. That's why I'm there. God's placed me in all these places and has placed you in all these places too. Intuition is a new thinking. I appreciate sharing your perspective. And that's all it is, 113. growing pans. That's an example of intuition, right? And intuition is that co-creation with love. It's all semantics in a lot of ways, and that's kind of what religion is. Because the Judeo-Christian, the Abrahamic religions, they're all the same, right? They're all money-making entities of the Abrahamic tradition, and that's Jewish, Christian, Islam, right? And they're all different. They're all a little different just by their cultural essence. Let me go get. I need my nose is was just out in the cold, and now it's warm, so my nose is like being drippy. Hold on. So, talk amongst yourselves there. Ah, 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 ah. So, last night, a whole bunch of folks who got washed out by the month ago 20 inches of rain that we had. And they were, the holler folk, pokey folk that were up in that valley that got totally washed out that no one talks about. That, washed out about 1,800 people. And there's still folk up there, and they're in trauma, right? And so they come here and get stuff, and they're in trauma. And so I talk to them, and there's no beds. I sleep on the concrete. I mean, which for my old frame is not the best, but it's okay. And it enables me to get closer to the understanding. I mean, it's like me being an aesthetic. It's like being that guy in his underpants, right? So last night, a bunch of people came in, and I mean, it's really sad because the male was maybe in his 30s, but he'd been smoking and dipping tobacco, so he's totally addicted. His girl, wife, whatever she was, beyond morbidly obese, and two little kids run around, smashing their head into the wall. And they said, "Well, we have no food. I want some food." Blah blah. I said, "Sure, here, knock yourself out." And the only food we have here is processed food. Right? Now I go out and pick greens. I mean, even in the winter, it's snow, ice. There's still greens out. Burdocks still there, and so I pick it and wash it off, and I kind of cut it up in little chunks with the scissors, and then the can of peas and corn and potatoes, and they're all good vegetables. They've been in the can for a while, but they're all good. And so then I just heat them up. Just heat them up. And I don't have Element, I have microwave, so just kind of heat it up in the microwave. Put water there, heat it up in the microwave, let it get really hot, and let it sit. Heat it up again, get it real hot, let it sit, season it. So anyway, I gave him some of that, and wow, this is great. I said, yeah, this is all you got to do. And all they took with them was cookies, candy, chips, stuff like that. So then after they left, another old couple came, and they did better at just taking vegetables, cans, and I got them, I kind of like had them. We sat down and breathed and prayed, and they were like, "Why not?" The other guy started to cry, and said, "My life is lost." I said, "No, the past is the past. The future ain't here yet. It's what's going on right here, right now." And the woman was like going, "Oh." So we did that for about an hour, and then they left, right? Because it was gonna start sleeting. Then a guy showed up, and he had his two boys with him, and they played basketball. Down underneath, a couple levels below me, there's a kind of gymnasium, and so they played, and he was great. He was a great dad. And the two boys were, one was a genius, right? And he was about 10, and that's his, how he was playing basketball was, he was inventing a new game of basketball every second of the moment, and it was like, whoa, this is pretty interesting. And his little brother, who was like, oh, maybe 6, but a little peanut, he was just like me, and he was a tricky monkey like me, and he didn't get frustrated, didn't get upset, and the guy was really smart. He started, just getting upset about pretty much everything, and I was trying to say, buddy, don't worry about it, just do your best. That's all you got to do. You don't have to be perfect. And their father was great. He was playing them. He was showing how to pick, and his father was like high school basketball star, but now 30s and working somewhere and doing good. I mean, everyone had nice clothes on, shoes, had a nice car, and the guy was pretty well read. We were, talking about um, the church and Bible studies, and I was like talking like I am talking to you about him because that's how I talk to everybody here, just like I talk to you, but one on one, not in the big churchy crew, because the minister and the deacons, they're just like the guys that you know the Pharisees. So anyway, let's see what these guys have to say. Come on.
Shamans to ancient mystics, these tools open doorways when used sparingly with proper guidance and reverence. Yet today's spiritual marketplace perverts this wisdom, promoting constant use over disciplined practice. Look at how many chase externally induced states, believing substances alone will fast-track evolution. Your body naturally produces every compound needed for transformation. The issue lies.
That's why I don't do drugs, right? I've tried them, back in the 60s and 70s, working in the rock and roll world in New York City. Of course, I tried them, but I just tried them. I didn't use them like everyone else was using them daily. Meaning, I don't smoke anything. I don't drink anything. I mean, if I'm out with somebody and they're buying me a nice dinner, they buy a bottle of wine, I'll have a glass of wine, right? And I'll get a glass of ice and put 2 ice cubes into my glass of wine and have a few sips of that. And then I'll pour that into the glass of ice cubes. And ergo, that glass of wine will last me a whole night, right? Instead of having to drink the whole bottle. So substances have their place, but they're not there to be the foundation of any belief structure. Yeah, we have been very blessed. I've been praying all the time, so we've been right on the razor's edge. Just 15 miles over there. They got a lot of snow over back behind us. They got a lot of ice. We got a little bit of snow and a bit of ice. And if we are out there late at night when the sun ain't out, um, the road, you don't want to do that. That's being pretty stupid. That's one reason why I'm here. You know, being the caretaker, right? And I'm here for anybody who needs it, because the rest of the folks, they're only here 3 or 4 hours, 2 or 3 days a week. We're no longer here 7 days, 24/7. We stopped that about 2 months ago. But so I'm here, and I let folk in and talk to them and get them what they need. And most people, when they go, well, I want someplace warm to stay. Well, this plane ain't warm, like it's like 58 degrees. Well, when it's 58 degrees outside. 58 degrees, pretty good. But well, why can't you make it hotter? Well, that's all it is. I don't know how to. I don't. You know, I don't. Right, and it's really good not to have to. It stays at 58 degrees. It's this guy who comes in and fools around with it every other day or so to keep it going and keep it around 58 degrees, right? Which is fine. So those people get huffy when there's no beds here. It's only I'm not staying here. I said, good. You don't have to stay here. I'll take you upstairs and you can go. So that's the entitled attitude, right? Sometimes we need a reminder of the present. Yep, and that's where we are right now. We're having this experience. What's going on in the Gaza, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Europe. Our economic systems are about to collapse. We are being forced to accept a new, right? And after World War II, the United States had this mammoth manufacturing thing that was untouched by war. The rest of the world had been bombed into dust, and we could make things and sell everything. And we're the only guys who had a navy, so we could keep world peace. And we made an agreement with pretty much everybody at Yalta. There was FDR, Stalin, and Mr. Churchill, and they were the representative of the world order, right? Those three guys. They realized the only way they could keep the world order was to have low-grade, continuous, never-ending war, right? That's called the Cold War. It's an iron curtain going up, and we got to build a wall on our southern border. It's low-grade conflict, right? So the masses don't think about how to breathe, right? Okay, let's breathe for a second.
It's not in the sacred medicines themselves. These states remain as genuine as any other. The problem emerges through dependency. Traditional wisdom teaches occasional sacred medicine work while developing natural abilities. Modern culture skips the development, creating eternal.
Right, our bodies create every drug you need, right? Every healing you need, every frequency you need, right? But dependency enables a thing called profit.
Seekers rather than realized beings. This dependency pattern extends beyond plant medicines. Watch how many spiritual seekers become addicted to workshops, certifications, and initiations, constantly seeking external validation rather than developing internal power. The marketplace feeds this addiction. New techniques emerge daily while ancient wisdom gathers dust. Your power lives within, yet modern spirituality keeps you looking outside. The second lie poisons countless seekers. Comfort equals growth. Modern spirituality sells.
1,000 years from now, when Chuckalucks with degrees are looking at our civilization, why did that empire fall? Why did the American, neo-colonial world order fall apart? It was doing fine for 70 years. They had no real wars. They had constant war, but just little ones. And it was over resources, right? And it really wasn't, because there's enough for everybody, every place you go. Wherever you go, there you are, right? And I've experienced that my whole life. I've traveled the world pretty thoroughly, and every place I went, everything I needed was there, right here, on the deep green. Everything I need is right there, right? Of course, the cockroaches have come in and are just ripping the place up and destroying the balance, and that's why we had the event, and that's why we had the 20 inches of rain, and that's why we're going to keep having right now the cold weather and the ice and the snow. Right now, we're being very lucky, um, blessed by love's co-creation. That yeah, it's ridiculously cold at night. Last night it was 3 degrees, but it was 58 degrees in here. That's a blessing. Thank you, Jesus. And yes, last night when instead of having to go down 7 levels to go use the bathroom, I piss in a cup and then go down the end of the hall and the emergency escape tunnel. I just kind of pour the urine down the storm drain, right? That's where the toilet goes. It's no big deal. But that tunnel is pretty much the outside. It's not snowing there, but I mean, if it's snowing really hard and the wind is really blowing, it'll blow it down that tunnel, and there'll be snow drifts in there. But it's a tunnel. It's underground, so it's moist all the time. So you kind of open up that emergency hatch, and you go to pour the Dixie cup of urine down the storm drain. There's ice everywhere. So that there's ice everywhere there, and it's not raining or sleeting or hailing or snowing on it per se. Where the parking lot is. It's and the road and the road from the parking lot to the county road, not the state road, just the county road that is totally obliterated from the storm. There's big chunks of it missing, and ergo, the county doesn't come up that road with the snowplow or the salt. It's and I can go up to the lookout tower and look out, and I can see the road that goes downhill, and it's a glistening, you know, sheet of ice. But here it is, from 10 o'clock when the sun came up over the hill over there. And right now it's sunny, but it's, in about 5 minutes it'll be cloudy, right? But that sun's enough to melt that ice, right? So if you want to get around, go someplace, this is the time to do it, not at, dark 30, right? And then into the night and then into the morning. So I've been here at least since last week, right? When that first storm kind of started to come. And so like I said, Arkansas is just, I don't know, 60, 70 miles due north of us. They had I called up some friends up there and they said they had a foot of snow. Right? I had friends in the Ohio Valley, and they were totally messed. And my friends up in upstate New York, they had like 28 inches of snow in 4 hours. It's like, so I'm very blessed. Yes, we had some snow, but not really. And yes, we had more ice than snow, but still, when that sun came out, it was gone in the morning, and that was back then. Last night, everything was a sheet of ice. If you were out and about, and I asked that dad, I said, "So how do you drive on that stuff?" And he said, very carefully. He goes, and I just live not too far from here. It's not like I have to drive miles and miles. And the kids had been in the house. And so everyone told me that you were being the caretaker. So I knew you were here to let us in. And he goes, how do you know that you don't have the bells and whistles on? How do you know when we show up? I said, I can just feel it. So I go up the stairs, and it's a good exercise for me to do that. The elevator don't work. We got electricity, but I try not to use too much of it. I don't keep everything all lit up. If people are there, I turn the lights on. If they're not there, it's dark, right? And that's good because Oh, no one's broken real. I mean, I can feel when people show or are coming up the hill, so I can walk up the steps and go to the entrance, and um, and there they are, right? And I have the door tied up, so even if they could uh, pick the lock or whatever, um, they're not getting in. So I let them in, and there were a couple of nights ago some hooligans, but I brought them down to play basketball, right? And so I basically, I can barely walk, can barely see, and so I said, I'm not going to shoot anything, but I am going to play center here. He goes, well, I'm 6 inches taller than you. How can you be center? I said, oh, easy. And basically, you know, I still have my Tai Chi slash, jujitsu juice in me. So anyway, it was really fun because they had their little kids with them, who were the age of like 4 and 5, right? So there were 4 of them against like 6 of the guys who were somewhere between 20 something and 30 something, and they wanted to show off. And so I said to the kids, I said, first we're gonna teach you how to do push hands, and we were doing push hands. That's all I had to do. When you're gonna go, um, you can see them coming in to do a layup for a shot. Don't even touch them. Don't even get in their way. Just stick your hand and tap the ball out of their hand. And when they're dribbling it and it's in midair, just tap the ball. And we did that for about 15 minutes until the guys got disgusted. And okay, we're gonna go. And the kids, no, Daddy, let's stay. This is fun. Whereas 2 nights later, the dad with his 2 boys, he was really good. He was teaching them that. And the cheeky monkey, so the cheeky monkey knew how to do exactly what I showed the other youngsters 2 days earlier. And so he and his older brother, who was like about 10, and his dad was going up against them. And all I did was I moved a chair out onto the court and sat down. And basically, it was in a place where they were going to, by my being in a chair, it slowed him down. Right. And the 10-year-old, it's not fair. I said, what do you mean it's not fair? Your dad was like state champion, and you're 10 years old, and you're a real good dribbler, and you can pretty much shoot. And your little brother, who's only like, 4 feet taller than you are, he's knocking a ball out of your hand and taking it away from you, right? And then shooting it over to me, and then he runs by, and I showed him how, because he's trying to shoot like his father and his dad. I said, no, you're gonna have to wait a few years for that. So I said, you have to do the alley oop. And I said, this is what you do. You had the ball, you would put it between your legs, and you just kind of throw it up like that with a little spin towards you. It's going to hit the backboard. 80% of the time, it's going to go in. I mean, the only time it's going to fly away if you barely hit the backboard on one side or the other. But you get it kind of in the middle, that sucker's going to go in. So he was doing that. His father was loving it. He thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He was laughing. The older boy, he was sulking, right? And so I said, okay. Then it's the little guy and dad against you and me against them. And so I did the same thing, but he was overthinking everything, right? And so he wasn't doing what his little brother was doing, which was being a little monkey. He wasn't trying to, he was just trying to knock the ball while the dad or his brother was, you know, dribbling it towards the basket, and it would either roll towards me or bounce towards me, and then I would just like hand it over to him, and he would alley oop it in. So the older boy couldn't do that. He got frustrated again. So, and his father was really good because he goes, "Okay." I said to his father, "So it's time um, for suicides," and he goes, "Well, kind of. We're gonna, because we're gonna run around, and I got my stopwatch here, and we'll do it." So they did that, and they really did a great job at that. So he was great. They were great, and they'll be back again, I'm sure, because when the two boys were, you know, and the little cheeky monkey was great because he could just knock it out of his older brother's hands. He didn't have to like sink it in. He just kept knocking it out of his hands. And the older brother was pretty interesting because at a certain point I said, "So listen, you're getting frustrated because you're overthinking this. So why don't you invent a new game of basketball?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "Huh?" So yeah, I mean, go for it. And he does. And so he did. And it was great. And then he didn't sulk. He was having a great old time explaining the new game of basketball to his dad and his little brother. And they went along with it. And we spent we were here for about an hour and a half doing that. So it was great. Much better than those other chuckleheads who couldn't stand being here, for more than 20 minutes, right? So anyway, so there's Fish. What does Fish have to say? Did y'all get any snow? Yep, we did. Now there's another storm heading our way in Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We could have a lot of snow, but I'm praying to do the same because we've had 5 different storms, like the 20 inches of rain. I was at the deep green, and that's why I came here after that because it didn't. I mean, it was right 2 hollers away. It was raining like Noah, and it was raining where I was, but it was no big deal. But the roads around me are really getting. They're not doing anything to them, and they're just like falling away. So it was first an extra 30 minutes to get where I want to go. Then it was an extra 40 minutes, and now it's an extra hour. And with the cold stuff, I can't go up and over on the really small farmer roads because they go way high up and they go way high down and way high up. So that's like really steep, and it's like half the roads. There's a cliff on the other side that goes down to the bottom like 800 feet. So I'm not a moron. I'm not going to drive because the guy the other night who showed up with his girlfriend and the kids, they live up in that neck of the woods. I know who they are. And I said, "Well, you came down here." I said, "Yeah, we got hungry." I said, we left you a ton of food, and well, it all got washed out with that rain." I said, we kind of put it up on the edge of the top of the hill. How did it get wet? Well, it was, we moved it all down, and we put the tent down below because we couldn't drive our car up there. We had to walk. I said, "Walk? What? 100, 200 yards? Yes, that's really far." And so they got rained out, and their whole tent and everything was right away. Now the girls with the clipboards say, "Well, they took it all down and sold it for drug money." I said, well, my friends are just human. It's just when they're doing their best. Yeah, they're awesome.
Convenience, casual practice, weekend workshops, and easy enlightenment. Now face reality. The realized yogis who achieved true transformation practiced in Himalayan caves from 2 a.m. until 10 a.m. every morning, year after year. Their dedication created lasting change while modern seekers expect results from minimal effort. Look at the dietary patterns of realized masters across time and culture. From ancient Egypt to India and China to the Gnostic traditions, every authentic mystic culture has discovered the same truth. The highest states of consciousness demanded plant-based nutrition. These masters, through direct
See, I can't even get that. Meaning, basically, I have no cash. I got rid of everything I had. I live on 800. I have $400 a month. That's my expendable money, like gas or this or that. Right? The other money goes to electric bill and insurance and stuff, right? Medicine and things of that nature. But as things get more expensive, like less and less of all of that. So you know, I eat what is accessible from from our food pantry, and everything is processed food. So I don't really eat that much. Like I said, I kind of go out up in the, go out from the the undisclosed, out of the tunnel and go up into the hill past the parking lot. Burdoc's still there. I clip, I kind of had a pair of scissors, fill the bag, until I take 2 leaves of burdock. I wash it off. I cut it up, and then I mix it up with a can of, peas and string beans and onions. I have no real, because I go to the supermarket and there's stuff that everything they got there that is quote unquote fresh vegetables are all GMO. There is no real food, right? So, and that is why our healthcare is what it is, and we spend more on healthcare than anybody else, and Zimbabwe does a better job than we do because our whole healthcare is based on profit. So it's all based on hospitals, right? And they don't take care of you until you're about to die, and then they have this big, event where they operate on you, right? It's like, when I died in 2014, I wanted to cut my legs off, cut up 20 feet of my colon, open heart surgery, and so I didn't do that. I changed my diet. I changed my life. I got rid of all the stuff, the comfort, convenience, right? No, I'm not living with Ted Kaczynski or the poor folk in the Gaza Strip, but I kind of got rid of convenience. My place is like heaven for 340 days of the year. And now, 40 or 60 days is going to be pretty cold and snowy and all the above.
Experience found that meat blocked subtle energy development. The ancient Vedic sages, Egyptian hierophants and Netirians, Chinese adepts, and modern yogis all arrived at the same conclusion. Fruitarian and vegetarian diets electrify the body for higher vibrational states. This represents the level of dedication transformation demands. Your comfort-seeking ego resists such changes, yet every culture pursuing liberation independently discovered these same requirements. This correlation transcends coincidence. The physical vessel must be purified for higher consciousness to flow. Modern spirituality avoids these uncomfortable truths, yet the evidence spans millennia across traditions. You must understand, levels of attainment exist. Each level demands greater dedication than the last. The masters chose cave meditation not for extremity, but because transformation required that intensity. Modern.
So I am a lazy slug. I know all this. I've, lived in caves with masters. I've done all of that. And, I continually had a convenient um, kind of lifestyle. I kind of changed it up by being the world globetrotter and doing all kinds of interesting stuff. But it was, I am a hedonist. that's one of my character. When let's see, 2003, just kind of when I had a realization of all of this. And I stumbled into, I was taking care of my parents. I was down in Florida. My lawyer friends came back. We started a Blue Door. We bought that really nice house in Stewart, right on the Intercoastal. Um, and, what's his, Will I Am, my buddy Will I Am. We were doing the spiritual whoop-de-doo. And I was doing all these events and stuff, and more or less, they were fun. They were just, I would go there. My life has actually been motivated by women, meaning I would stumble into a really interesting woman, like in '03, right? I stumbled into a woman. I went to a New Age study group, and there was a woman there who was a truly amazing, um, a indigenous healing priestess from the Andes, right? And she was a was like the old Irish crone. Right? She was her own version, right? And she had a girlfriend who was probably in her 80s, right? But she looked really good, meaning for being in her 80s, right? She was thin. She was, didn't have a lot of wrinkles. I will bring the photo book of this event. We did an event. So there were all these people who were, and this thing was kind of centered between Miami and Fort Lauderdale, right? And there were a number of Aquarian bookstores and esoteric groups, and I was, living in Stewart, which is just a little out of the way. And I had a really good friend in Fort Lauderdale, and he was a big time developer, zillionaire, and and I knew them from back in the day, and his wife had been kind of my girlfriend, right? But not really. I mean, we were mostly buds. So I've had lots of, because women, I love women as my friends, and then they get a little frisky, and then you have a really good friend with benefits, right? And they like that, right? Because you're not their boyfriend, you're their friend first and foremost, and you know all this stuff about the human body and how to, woo, boy, that feels good. And so that was one of my motivating factors of my life. I would constantly stumble into interesting women who would like pick up on me, meaning I didn't like chase them. They, and they had their own thing going, and they loved the fact that they could, um, you know, have fun with me and still have their own life, and I wouldn't interfere with it, or I'd only be a help, not a hindrance. Anyway, so I was involved in this stuff like from about Y2K until, because I was in Virginia a lot from left Asheville and around '98, and I got this gig to go study the because there were a number of entities that were concerned about how people were getting truly off the hook about Y2K, and they kind of realized it was no big deal, but these people would make a big deal of it. So they sent me up the Devil's Highway to check out all these different. And I got a job in this town called Rustburg, and this guy was redoing lots of prisons and lots of fire stations, all the way from Blacksburg up to Charlottesville. And he was in Rustburg, which is a bit northeast of Lynchburg. Right? So we had a big, big mega church we were wiring in Lynchburg, and a jail in Lynchburg and Rustburg and Bedford, and another one almost north Richmond. And he was doing a hospital and 3 fire stations. Now these are all, they're not just wiring a house, you know. It's not just Romex. It's all in pipe. It's all in MC. It's a lot of controls. Um, there are a lot of circuits that have to be um, shielded. And so his crew, which was 2 of his sons and 1 of his nephews and 2 older guys, really were not up to it. They were screwing it up all the frigging time. Like the Wireless Church, and we used MC, and you're supposed to put these little bushings in there so the metal um, um, protecting shield doesn't. And these morons would cut it with a hacksaw, and all you really had to do is bend it, take 10 snips, and clip it. Right, bing, bang, boom, like 30 seconds. Use and there was a thing called a rotor split. These morons would just, you know, and then it would cut into the insulation, and they wouldn't use the bushing, and then they'd stick it into an, you know, a light fixture or an outlet or a switch, and then you know the sheetrock would go on the wall. We'd energize it. It would work for a little bit, but then somebody hit the switch, and the light fixture would blow out of the ceiling because it would sit dead short because of what these morons did. And that's about when I showed up. And they were only about maybe 4% into all of their work. So I got there in the nick of time to keep an eye on what they were doing and take care of the more complicated stuff and to wire all the panels and all the high voltage, right? And I was, you know, 2000, 60, 70, well, 2000, I was 50 years old. So I was still in relatively good shape. I hadn't really got heavy. So anyway, I did that for about 3 years, and I kept stumbling into because all these areas hadn't popped yet. So they were, you know, still suffering from the savings and loan thing. And I kept, like in Florida, my friend who I knew from New York, my friend from Fort Lauderdale, right? I knew those guys from the Soho days and from Long Island days, and then they went to Florida, and this guy, he just, you know, stepped into really one good deal after another. And his wife, her father was a pretty wealthy guy, and he died, and she, you know, inherited a chunk of change. So and she was smart with business, so they were very wealthy, right? They were probably 10 times wealthier than John Birmingham's parents, who are, you know, highly upper mobile bourgeois Americans, right? One little oops, you know, like we're heading towards an economic oops, where all of this real estate that's, you know, costs a fortune now. It's just like 2000 and between 2000 from the dot-com bubble to '08. That was a time when real estate went through the frigging roof because the stock market had kind of collapsed and the bond market had kind of collapsed, and the natural resource market had collapsed. So real estate went through the roof, and so all of the stuff is pretty obvious. It just keeps happening over and over again, and we're being pushed into a place where religion is turned into um, a banking deal. You know, the money changers, and they all are, you know, wanting to see Satan show up so we can have they want the end times to come so they can rejigger for the next 1,000 years of profit. Right, that's kind of where it's at. You know, so we can have the Federation, right, and James Kirk and Uhura and all the above. So that's where we're at. Right? Let's see. Happy New Year, Jane. Hello. I took a dump. No, Martyred Artist is back. Our buddy is very much the, I think Freud would say, anal retentive, right? But that's his, he has these character actors he likes to trot out. And it would be a lot more interesting instead of being Martyred Artist, he could be Trevor or, Beauregard, right? And or the guy who's the Indian mobster. Those three are pretty interesting. A lot more interesting than Martyred Artist, right? Um, anyway, so our good friend 113 left. We were having quite the nice little discussion. And let's go back to what our other friend here has to say.
Comfort based spirituality cannot produce similar results. Your evolution.
And that comfort based spirituality is exactly what Mr. Martyr Artist is doing when he says, I took a dump.
And equivalent dedication adapted to your circumstances.
And that's what Martyred Artist is, just a circumstantial, spiritual kind of guy.
This pattern extends beyond meditation. Every aspect of the Master's lives served to awaken: diet, sleep, practice, and service. Modern seekers want enlightenment without changing their lifestyles.
So, that's where we're pretty much at now. When I died and came back and got better and, took care of a few of contractual things I had with the desperate lawyers, and then went back. This one lawyer wanted me at my peak, so he sent me back to his house and, got the acupuncturist and the colonic therapist, and that's what Mr. Martyred Artist needs. He needs a colonic therapist, and the dietary thing, and the whole. I was being put back into the position that our friend there was talking about, and so I did that, and then it went from 2014 to 2015. I said, I'm just going to pick up where I left off, and I'm going to be in about 6 years right back, dying again without really taking care of business. So I made the decision to get rid of everything, which I did. It was right at the time, 06. No, it was right when things were like, before 19 and 20 and 20, before the pandemic. Real estate was hot. The economy was hot. Everything was groovy. So I sold everything and I gave it all away to the poor, right? There were a number, I have always been involved in social activism with churches and other organizations. Because even entities like Goodwill and every time you go in has a mission, things of that nature. They, on a certain level, do pretty good, but pretty much they're only out there looking for themselves. Like pretty money, and anybody who's, Martyred Artists. Why don't you tell us about entities that service people who are addicted to substances? 12-step programs. We've had many a conversation about them. Why don't you give us, your very excellent insights on what those entities are, right? And let's hear what you got to say, buddy. Oh, there's nobody left. There's only one person left. That's probably AI. Good little puppy. A puppy AI. So here it is. What time is it? 3:00. I am going to make myself a cup of tea, and I will probably be back 6-ish, right? So why doesn't everybody? That's a good time for everybody. It's not too late for those in Europe. 6:00 is like, what's it? 1:00 in the morning for you guys over there. I came on now because right now 3 o'clock is like 6, 7, 8. It's 8 o'clock. Maybe 2 hours. It's 3 o'clock now. Maybe 5 or 6. I'll come back. If no one shows up here wanting something, play basketball, talk, have a cup of tea, anything like nobody's shown up yet. But I did watch the floor. I mean, the girls with the clipboards really like it when I do stuff like that, and I fixed a few things, um, so I did that yesterday. So, modern artists, tell us your insights on the 12-step programs and the corporatization of drug assistance programs and mental health too. What's your opinion on mental health? Would love to hear that.
Real transformation demands total commitment. The fire of dedication burns through every aspect of life. Your social media feed sells spiritual comfort, while true growth requires facing discomfort head on. Consider what comfort-based spirituality produces. Temporary feel-good moments without lasting transformation. The masters understood that breaking through mental barriers requires intensity. When you meditate at 2 a.m. while others sleep, you face your real limitations. When you maintain practice despite physical discomfort, you develop spiritual strength. These challenges forge real power. The third lie spreads through promises of instant results. Modern marketers sell spiritual shortcuts while true evolution follows natural law. The cosmos took billions of years to develop your consciousness. Each authentic tradition teaches gradual unfoldment through dedicated practice. Quick fixes appeal to the ego while bypassing real transformation. If any of these three lies so far offended you, then good, because that's what's needed to grow. Like I said, these will be uncomfortable, but if you're intrigued to know what the rest are, then give us a like and subscribe. We'll keep exposing these deceptions while you help us grow. So, the fourth deception, spiritual relativism, claims all paths lead to truth. While many roads exist, discernment remains essential. Some practices accelerate evolution, while others perpetuate illusion. This everything goes mentality creates confusion rather than clarity. Ancient traditions survived millennia because they work. Modern inventions often serve profit over transformation. Look deeper at what these ancient traditions share, specific commonalities that transcend culture. Whether examining Vedic yoga, Egyptian mysticism, or esoteric Christian practices, certain fundamentals remain constant. Breathwork, energy cultivation, ethical discipline, dietary purification, and dedicated meditation form the backbone of every authentic path. Yet modern spiritual relativism ignores these universal principles. People claim their random combinations of practices equal time-tested methods. They mix meditation with materialism and combine sacred techniques with ego gratification. The brain power you want is not in a bottle, capsule, or magic lamp. It's in your brain right now. It's about the size of a cashew. This spiritual buffet approach creates confusion rather than clarity. Consider the core practices found across traditions. Every authentic path emphasizes control of sexual energy through specific disciplines, purification of diet and lifestyle, regular meditation at specific cosmic hours, service to others and ethical behavior, direct transmission from realized teachers, progressive stages of development. Modern spirituality often skips these fundamentals, claim.
And my whole life has been all of that, right? And because I live in the essence of the modern world, even though I've given up pretty much all of it, like I said, I'm not sitting by the side of the road in a diaper. Um, it is what it is, and I do my best. And and I know I have a limited amount of time, and I'm here not so much to do all of that. What our friend there was describing is something. As a young man, I practiced all of that, right? And for a good 20 years, I practiced it, right? And it had a great, that's why I am the way I am today, right? And I was involved in many extraordinary situations, right, because of those practices, and they were real world kind of things, right? And I, even though I had great teachers and was practicing to get rid of my ego and do everything that our friend there was explaining, and I did my best at it, but I didn't become a yogi, right? I just became your sensei Alba. And I've been told by teachers and God and many other folk that that's okay. This is my path at this time, and I am, doing my best to, in every day and every way, take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. Right? To be a doula of God's unconditional love, to be in conscious co-creation with love, right? And that's what I do actively, right? Now I'm not perfect. Back in the day when I was coming into consciousness around 4 years old, between 4 and 14, I was, you know, coming into the slot, right? And from 14 until 24, I was kind of the dude, right? Having some pretty amazing lessons and experiences. And then from about 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 to 22, I was on the bop. That's when I really, 14, I really started traveling all over the United States. When I was hanging with the original Dharma bums, the guys before Ken Kesey and Allen Ginsberg. But that's how I met them, because I was hanging with the real ones, like guys like Adam Purple. I'm sure Adam Purple's on. Let's see. Who was Adam Purple, New York City? There he is, right there. That's kind of what I look like now, right? This was in the middle of like Alphabet City, around Avenue E or G, kind of where Pearl Street starts, kind of a few blocks above Houston Street. And it's like really, that's where the nasty of the nasty. And he had this beautiful Garden of Eden, right? And he made his money playing chess at Washington Square. What's it say about Adam here? Let's see. Environmental activist, artist, community gardener. Now, that's kind of, doesn't really. Born November 1930, died 2015. American activist, urban hedonist, guerrilla gardener. Went by many names. Reverend Les Eagle, I remember that. Lester, our friend who had the World Community Consciousness Church, which was the Gray Rabbit. It's the Adam Purple. He looks. This is in probably 1980, and he kind of looks just like I. But he was in really good shape. He followed what our friend was discussing. From like 20. So go on about artists, social activists. Known for permanent purple attire. Look out from his garden to the crime-ridden Lower East Side. It says here, East Side Community Garden, who fought a losing battle to save his spectacular Eden, because he had a whole block, right? It's beautiful, right? And he surrounded the whole block with bed springs, when the bedding gone, but just the springs, rusty, right? And he grew, like blackberries in them. So, they're barbs, right? So he couldn't get in there, right? And one day, when the developers wanted to put a condo there, they just went in there with bulldozers and just kind of like the Gaza Strip, right? But I met him when I was 16, and probably 1966, and I met him, and I was photographing everything. That's when I was really getting into being Mr. Photographer. I started when I was 10. My dad made me the family photographer, and or his photographer, really. He didn't care about the rest. As long as I got good pictures of him and my mom. And my mom was like a movie star. It wasn't hard to get a good picture of my mom or my dad. My dad was like a movie star too. They were both A-listers in their own way. I mean, there was nobody like either of them. Anyway, so I was, shooting a lot, and I had met a guy who had Captain Louis. He was a grandson of Mr. Grandpa Sony, and he had a friend over near Thompson. There's a street in Thompson just up from Canal. That's there's clothes shop, every kind of shop. It was before Chinatown had its own version of this. This was more Jewish. And there was a Little Israel part right where the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge are, and not West Street, but East Broadway kind of went underneath Manhattan Bridge and went over to where Pearl Street is, which went down to where the FDR Drive is underneath it, where the Fulton Fish Market was, and where the South Street Seaport and all of that. Anyway, that's where Adam and just above that was the Bowery, right? And so that's where all the bums, but they were just the bums were like more the visible. They were like the alcoholics, right? But there were the bohemians, right? And the beatniks, the guys of the 40s and 50s. And they were just like the bums, meaning they had both experienced World War I, World War II, Korean War. And especially after World War II and the Korean War, GI Bill, these guys like Adam Purple, he went to college, right? And that's why he was at NYU, because he went to college there in a new school, and also at Columbia, and he got to play chess really well. And right there in Washington Square, all these really stuffy professors would come out, and he had 3 or 4. And they had these like concrete tables with concrete seats that you got to eat your lunch at, or play checkers, or play chess, right? And he would have 4 or 5 games going, and he'd have a clock, right? And he would just walk amongst them and make a move, hit the clock, right? And the other guys would go, right? And he would do it like within 10 seconds. They would take somewhere between 40 seconds and a minute. And the way he did this is first person who took more than 7 minutes in the game lost. You didn't have to go all the way to checkmate, and the first person who had more than 3 minutes, the guy who had the less than 3 minutes, the guy who had the more than 3 minutes, would lose. And he would basically play it $10 a game, sometimes $20 a game. The guy was a real jerk, maybe $100, but he would never leave there. He would get there maybe 11 in the morning and leave around 2 or 3, and he would never leave without at least $200 or $300 that he'd win from these clowns. Right? That's how I met him. Right? I walked down Fifth Avenue from 69th Street, from where my parents had their Park Avenue apartment, and I went all the way down there, and that was my walk. I would shoot everything, like 3 or 4 rolls of everything. Union Square was another park I used to shoot a lot in, and also was a good deal of that time I was I was working for the stalls, so I worked a lot, pretty much every day, but I didn't work like punch in, punch out. I would work with Grandpa Stall. I'd be his helper when I was younger. And then as Grandpa got even older, when I started working for Grandpa Stall, he probably was already 70, 80 years old. Mike was probably 45, 50 years old, right? And so that first 7 years that I worked with Grandpa, he worked on all these old, different areas, the Garment District, Soho, which was big industrial area, one of the last bits, way uptown on Harlem River was a ton of it's where the tugboats were. So there were a lot of big commercial marinas that fixed tugboats. So there was all kinds of stuff up, and they had all kinds of cranes and machines and old stuff, right? And they had also steel mills up there and aluminum smelters and all kinds of metal fabricating stuff that he made and serviced all kinds of machines. So those were the 3 kind of places that we would do work at. And as he got older and I got older, I got to know how to fix that stuff. So by the time I got, to be 14 to 19, I pretty much did all of Grandpa Stall's clients. I would go take care of it. Grandpa Stall got me a pager. I was one of the first people to have a pager, and people could page me and leave me a little message like, "Hey, this is Larry, and the smelter ain't working," and so I could call him right back and jump on a subway, and I had my little U.S. mail bag of tools, my everything bag, right? And that weighed between 40 and 70 pounds, depending. And that, walking all over New York, carrying that bag, and going up and down stairs, and that kept me in really good shape. As a youngster, I was in really good shape, and I was going to prep school, and being a swimmer, a lacrosse player, a wrestler, I was in pretty good shape. So girls actually kind of thought I was attractive and cute and all the above. And then when they would talk to me, and I was more interested in them than me telling them about me, they really liked that. And once I would say, "Oh, look, got this thing going on in your neck here. Let me take it off. And I go, oh my Lord, that feels so good. Guys, I just would watch how you would, be a jerk, talk about shit they don't want to hear, do stuff to them that makes them cry. That's not like you want to have a relationship with a woman. You don't kind of do it. You want to have a relationship with any human being. You don't do that, right? So anyway, there's only one person left. I've been on for an hour and 30 minutes, and it is 3:27. So anyway, so Adam Purple. Oh, let's see. See, my other mentor is on Google. Uh, Billy Kluver, artist, scientist. And there he is. Yeah, there's Billy. Died in 2004. Here's Automation House. He would make these machines that were just so. Anyway, I'd help him fabricate stuff like this. Right? But he basically, see what it says about him. Let's see. Billy Kluver died Sunday, 2004. Home in New Jersey, 76 years old. Kluver, a Swede who was born in Monaco in 27, studied electrical engineering in Stockholm and moved to the United States. Billy Kluver died. He was survived by his wife, Julie, engineer who collaborated with Kluver, scientist and engineer whose collaboration with artists helped give birth to Automation House, right? Billy Kluver, pioneering artist, engineer, Bell Labs. So he got a they don't even say this here, but he was one of the people who discovered background radiation, founder of Experiments in Artist and Technology, which was at said to learn that Billy died. Billy Kluver, Experiment in Art and Technology. 68, he became president of Experiments in Arts and Technology, position he held until his death. So 68 was about when I met him, and he had this thing called, Automation House in the. So he was part of the Council for Foreign Relations. He was their, interesting guy. First art project to which Swedish engineer Billy Kluver passed away. See, now really, so he did the Armory show, right, which brought modern art to the United States. The Armory building in Midtown, that footprint of the Armory is where a Museum of Modern Art is. Billy basically did that, and they don't really just talk about his death. Yeah, too bad. But that was my other mentor of that period of time when I was 16. Actually, I met Billy a little younger because my parents lived just down the street from the Council of Foreign Relations. He had this big window on 69th Street, and I'd walk our dog to Central Park, and it was this big, gigantic wall, and it had this gigantic window, and it was one of those curved windows, so there was no reflection. It looked like you could just walk through it. And you looked in it, and all this amazing stuff. He had hologram. He's the first guy I ever saw fooling around with holograms, right? And lasers and stuff like that. So that's Martyred. I'm sorry that I can't pick up the phone because I'm down in the basement. No signals get down here. Sorry, bud. I'd have to go all the way up, and then this wouldn't work up there, right? So, sorry. So that's life, right? So anyway, so Adam Purple had all these buddies who were bohemians, and these guys were all living in abandoned buildings. That's how I learned how to live in abandoned buildings. And they had some amazing, especially uptown, where the rich people, the Dutch were back in it, like the Bronx. The reason why it's called the Bronx, they don't call it the Brooklyn or the Manhattan or the Staten Island. The Bronx was owned by a family called the Bronx, right? The Bronx family, right? And they were some of the richest Dutch folk who, the Dutch Indies Company. They were some of the people who were banking slavery. Anyway, so they had some pretty freaking amazing houses and buildings up there. That the South Bronx and was because that was this big hill. So Manhattan was this icky kind of mosquito, and the Indians didn't even want to be there. But up there it was nice, and then it just kept going up into upstate New York, up into all those mountains up there, right? And so like the Palisades were just off where the Bronx were. It's like right kind of where they built the George Washington Bridge. And to build a big bridge like that, you gotta have some money. So that was like, anyway. So these guys had, and the 7 train would go straight up there, right? And that was like our train. We get on the 7. Nobody would get on that train until 125th Street, right? So I got to know those guys really well. And in the winter, they were like, rich people. They would go to Florida. They go to California. They go to Arizona in the winter time. They wouldn't stick around in New York, and because they didn't have to. They weren't paying rent. Didn't have a job, and a big, beautiful building. The city, when they built the BQE and the West Side Highway, they kind of destroyed these neighborhoods. So a lot of these buildings that they weren't going to tear down per se, they would just cinder block the front door and all the windows on the first 2 stories. And then everything above still had windows in them, right? Still, but you couldn't get in. But a lot of these, like the federal courthouse that was uptown, was one of these buildings. That was a beautiful building. Everything was marble and mahogany, and they just closed it up, cinder blocked it up. But you could get in through it had its own subway stop, which the subways didn't stop at anymore. And the revolving door still, went. And when Adam took me there, he says, I just found his place. A friend of mine's been living here, but he doesn't know anything about electricity, but you do. So here, let's go take a look. And we went up there, man, all I did was hit the main, everything worked. Pumps went on, so there was water in the lines. The steam from Con Ed was still there. I went and borrowed a Con Ed wrench to turn the steam on so it had heat. The elevators worked, the lights worked, everything worked. It was like, really? So that was one of the main hangouts, was that place. Had its own dining hall for the judges. The silverware was still there. I mean, these were the good old days, 60s, 70s, right? And I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't trying to, I wasn't upset about my parents. I couldn't give a fuck about anything. The only person who truly loved me and I loved them was, my grandma. Now, my parents were okay, but I had nothing to do with them ever. A couple of times I stayed there a bit, but not really. And my brothers and sisters, they were just lost. They still are. I really. So I did not have the basic teenage malaise that a lot of people have. I had all of these amazing mentors in my life: Thomas Merton, Robert, John Stein, Robert, no, John Steinbeck. Yeah, John Steinbeck was my mother's second cousin when I was in New York. And there were, Billy Kluver, a whole bunch of other people. When I was 16, I had a great girlfriend who was a mystic. And this is a life that most people don't have because I flowed with it. I didn't worry about any of it. I didn't. And when I watched everyone doing drugs and seeing what it did to their life, I didn't do drugs. It was no big deal. I tried them out. Really didn't do anything for me. And Hallie, she was a true mystic. She was what that guy was discussing. That was her, right? And her father was an English duke or earl or whatever, and he spent most of his career in India running a observatory for the Queen, and either Halley's Comet was named after his daughter, or his daughter was named after Halley's Comet. I'm not quite sure. She never quite gave me that one, but she knew all these Eastern Indian mystics. When she was a little girl, she would play with these guys. And then in the 60s, when she was my girlfriend, I was living with her on McDougal Street. And on McDougal Street, right where 6th Avenue is, McDougal's here. It kind of parallels 6th Avenue, right? McDougal kind of starts at Father Fagan, where Spring Street in Soho hits Barrack Street, which then becomes 6th Avenue. There's a park, Father Fagan thing, and that's where McDougal goes up through, what is known as West Village, right? And it parallels 6th Avenue, goes kind of right up and right through NYU, keeps going. 5th Avenue is over there, and McDougal's there, and McDougal ends at Washington Square Park. And there's a street right where that is, and it's between Washington Square Park and 6th Avenue, and I think there's other little street there. And there are these little, because they were made by the Dutch, and they were like little farms, so they have really tall walls, and they have a door where the street is. You go through the door, and it goes into like a beautiful garden, and there'll be 2 or 3 houses on the garden. And Hallie had one of those houses, and it was like a hobbit house, right? And it was, no one even knew it was there. It was a whole nother universe. So when these Indian guru guys would come with and do gigantic things at Madison Square Garden or wherever they were doing their show, they wouldn't, their whole entourage was at the Waldorf Astoria. They would stay with Hallie. So it would be me, Hallie, and this guy who would be floating above the pillow. So this was the life I had and still do have, but I'm just out in the woods here, right? And there are, when I first got here 25 years ago, there were all these holler people who were like the Indian guys, meaning there's still 3 or 4 of them that still are my buds, and I go see them. And they're like, I'm pushing 80, they're pushing 100, and they can like lift trees and, because I was exercising my free will to experience the hedonistic, materialistic world through a spiritual lens, right? And so that was, I guess, what I was here to do. And in it, I did everything that our friend was discussing, So I was doing those spiritual exercises. I was being a spirit of service to the folk. And, not, it wasn't my job, but I love helping people. I still do love helping people. I love seeing people happy, right? I've gotten old enough to still do that, but not enable people um, to jack off. Because when you are helping folk, like a good example is John Birmingham, right? So I care about him. He's my friend. I pray for him. I would go back there if he was ready, willing, and able to change his life. But I gave him a good 32 shots at, you know, my ability to help him change his life for the better so he could actually have a relationship with his children that would be meaningful to him and his parents, because by his whatever he's doing with his life is keeping his parents from having the experience of having his kids as their grandchildren, right? So I'm not an enabler. I've been there because I was unconscious that I was doing that. But by the time I hit 25, I kind of got the 411 on that. So all my relationships have been pretty truly freaking. All the other ones before I was 25 were pretty freaking truly amazing, and but I did have because I was still learning, as I am still learning today. I don't know everything, Just to me, I'm a young soul. This is conscious intent I am, and so I'm learning as I'm going along, and part of that process of learning is to be consciously intent to serve love's co-creation by being a doula, right? And what does a doula do? Brings new life into existence through service to God's love unconditionally in the agape form. So anyway, so those two cats, Adam Purple and Billy Kluver, were just two of the hundreds of amazing teachers I've had through my whole life, right? And every one, and why none of those guys, if I had been a jerk off, oh, look how cool I am, and they would have left me on the side of the road, because I was there, quiet, listening, understanding, learning, growing, being part of their community in a positive way. I was, and all those folks in that period between 14 and 25, I was known as the kid, right? Around 22. From 22 until 32, I was the dude, right? Then the doctor, and then a bunch of other things. But that's what a life is, one of service to love's co-creation, right? And again, I'm not perfect. I just do my best, right? And it works out great. I could have been, I could be annoyed being down here in the basement, but it's sure better than being out there in the woods where if the electricity goes off, I'll be, because it's freaking cold. I mean, right now with the sun out, it's 20 degrees out there, right? Last night, when whatever moisture was in the air, this is in the mountains, this is a rainforest. It's always kind of moist. Everything had glass on it, and it didn't rain. It wasn't, sleeting or anything. It was just the moisture in the air condensed on whatever surface it touched and was a sheet of glass, right? So living down here in the undisclosed location, helping people, going up top and helping people get something to eat or get a pair of socks or play basketball or any of the above. That's right by me. A lot of people, oh, I don't want to do that. I was asleep. We woke me up. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, we're not doing this anymore. Get out. No, I'm not the lady with a clipboard, I'm saying, you hungry? Okay, here, let's go find a bag. Here's a bag. Here's a bag. Just put stuff in it. Fill it up. Let's go. And you hungry? I got actually. Let's go down here to the canteen and get something. Because I always had something. I've been cooking over the last days, and it's in the fridge. I take it out of the fridge. I add water to it. I put it in the microwave. Hit the button, and that's what a microwave is good for. Something really good. You're just warming it up. And then I put it in a styrofoam cup in a plastic spoon, so they take it with them, and I read, "This is amazing. What is this?" I said, "Well, that's that's Collier's, and that's burdock, and burdock. Give me the stuff in the woods." I said, "Yep, that's. I mean, if they know what it is." So Grandma used to. I said, "I know. That's why I'm eating it." And so, anyway, what else can I say? That's about it. Okay. And I'll probably come back later in 2 hours from now, give or take, dark 30-ish. See if anyone shows up. And tomorrow, if depending on the weather, if it is like what it is right now, I'm gonna go run some errands and check on a few people. See what roads are still in existence. So that's before the big storm, because we could easily get whacked by 20 inches of snow, easy. And easily the electricity could go out. And some people would come and get me and take me to a warm spot. But where the deep green is, it's a good 30 miles from here, and the roads are really in terrible shape, and people would think twice about coming and get me. I mean, here it's like they're not that far away. I'm not that far off the main road. And all those people have radiant gas heat. I mean, the electricity not on, their house is still warm. So, yeah, like it's it's probably, like I said, it's 58. When the sun was out about 2 hours ago, when I first started doing this, the sun was up, so it was probably inside here, maybe 5, 6 degrees warmer than it is right now. And outside it was probably 20 degrees warmer. Then it was probably 30. It was probably 20. It's probably getting in the teens out there now. So that's kind of what it is. So anybody, you guys, wherever you are, stay warm, be safe. I'll see you in an hour or two. Catch you later. Bye.